They always said freedom was a birthright, but they never mentioned the invisible leash. From the earliest breath, a subtle trade begins, something precious for something promised, and you don't even realize it's happening. Not at first. It begins with small exchanges, your raw spark for a smile, your honesty for silence, your sense of wonder for a little approval. They tell you it's growing up. They call it learning to behave. But it's the beginning of a slow erosion. Long before you knew what it meant to lose yourself, you were already handing out pieces of your inner fire, like candy on Halloween. Not because you were careless, but because you were conditioned. You thought you were being good, you were being groomed. For a system, for an order, for a machinery that doesn't require chains to trap you, only expectations. That's the trick no one warns you about. Nobody has to snatch your soul. You'll sign it away piece by piece just to feel safe, just to be seen, just to keep the peace. And the worst part, you'll do it with a smile thinking it's your idea. Because that's what you were taught, to voluntarily cut off your own wings and call it being grounded. Look around. Most adults are just children who kept agreeing to trades, their joy traded for deadlines, their playfulness shelved for productivity, their wild heart bottled up for predictability, but they wrap it in better language. Call it maturity, call it stability, call it responsibility. Underneath, it's the same pattern, a quiet pact made again and again. Your vitality for their comfort, your presence for their protocol, your truth for their system. Nobody forces you. They don't need to. You've been trained to pull your own strings, and you do it beautifully. You file yourself down to be smooth enough to fit in the box. You lower your voice, swallow your instincts, smile when you want to scream, because the reward is comfort, recognition, safety, except it's not safety, it's sedation. Most people don't feel it happening. They think the ache inside is just what adulthood feels like. That emptiness, it's not depression. It's the sound of your soul calling for rescue. But they label it burnout. They sell you sleep apps, supplements, self-help books. Nobody tells you the truth, that it's not your body that's exhausted. It's your spirit, crushed under the weight of pretending. But if you've made it this far, you're not fully asleep. A part of you remembers, that ancient part, the one that danced before it walked, that whispered secrets to trees and stars, the part that lived in awe before the world taught you to fear. That part isn't gone. It's buried beneath layers of rules, rewards, and repetition, but it remembers what it was like to live without a mask, to live without a leash. Imagine you could see the agreement now, not metaphorically, really see it, the document you never signed, but keep honoring, the contract that says, play along, don't make waves, dim your light, follow the script. Would you still keep nodding? Or would something in you finally snap? Would you finally ask, who taught me to treat myself like a tool, and who profits every time I forget I'm not one? This isn't just theory, this is the blueprint for how the machine was built. On the backs of beautiful humans who forgot they were never meant to be cogs. The system is elegant because you police yourself, you perform the routine, you wear the mask, you clock in, check out, pay bills, follow orders, and call it life. But this story isn't about despair. It's about revolt, not with weapons, with wakefulness. Because the real revolution doesn't start in the streets. It starts inside you. When you decide to stop leaking your life force through 1,000 small compromises. When you decide to stop trading your soul for comfort disguised as success. We're not just naming the contract, we're burning it. This is your map back to yourself, back to the version of you that never needed validation to exist. the one who didn't need to fit in to feel whole, before the training, before the masks, before the ritual of forgetting. You're not broken. You're programmed, and what's been programmed can be rewritten. You were never born to be a product. You were meant to be a presence. And all those tiny rituals that shape your day, they're not random. They're ceremonies, energy exchanges, every morning scroll, every corporate meeting, every polite lie you tell yourself to survive. It's all part of the system that harvests your power. You think you're participating, but you're being harvested. Even childhood isn't safe. That's where it all begins. Think back. You barefoot in the dirt singing nonsense songs to the sky, believing every leaf was alive. That was freedom. That was truth. Then came the instructions. Sit down. Stop asking. Obey. Do it this way. Be normal. Fit in. And you did. Because you were smart. You learned how to earn love. How to trade your magic for gold stars. You discovered that curiosity could be punished. That joy could be too loud. That dreams could be embarrassing. So you learned the real lesson: to be accepted. Shrink. They never needed to lock you in a room. They just trained you to walk in and close the door yourself. Schools weren't built to nurture. They were built to standardize. Desks in rows, bells like factory alarms, points for following, punishment for dreaming too loudly. You weren't being educated. You were being formatted. Conditioned for compliance, taught that life was about rules, rubrics, and repeating what someone else said. You became the product of a system designed to erase you and replace you with a replica who could be managed. And still, most people never ask why. Why they feel numb. Why joy is fleeting. Why peace seems like a myth. They don't realize the soul-deep exhaustion isn't laziness. It's the cost of pretending. Every "I'm fine" when you're not. Every maybe later to your dreams. Every day spent in a role that silences your truth. It adds up. And the worst part? The machine celebrates your sacrifice. They call you responsible, a team player, productive, mature. All words that really mean you're no longer dangerous. Because real danger isn't a weapon. It's a person who remembers who they are. If you're still here, that memory hasn't left you. It's flickering in your chest, whispering that this isn't what you came here for. You weren't born to chase promotions or retire in comfort. You were born to blaze, to create, to feel, to shake the ground with your presence. But they trained you to be grateful for crumbs, grateful for survival, grateful for stress, and they wrapped it in slogans and screens and spreadsheets. But it's all the same dance. Feed the system, starve the soul. There is nothing noble about spiritual bankruptcy. There's no medal for being the most obedient corpse. And still, they'll try to convince you that you're lucky. Lucky to have a job that devours your hours. Lucky to afford the bills that keep you tethered. Lucky to be approved by a culture that needs you half asleep to keep operating. They don't want you free. They want you manageable, predictable, programmed. And the most powerful way to do that? Through rituals so subtle you don't even see them. You think the national anthem is just tradition. It's initiation. You think standing in line is polite. It's rehearsal. You think your morning commute is normal. It's sacrifice, your time, your focus, your energy. Every moment is a ritual. And each one says, give us your essence. Look at your life. How much of it is truly yours? How much was chosen by you, for you? How much was inherited, imposed, absorbed? There's no judgment here, only clarity. Because once you see the game, you can stop playing by their rules. And that's what they fear the most. Not rebellion in the streets, but rebellion in the soul. Quiet defiance that says, I won't trade my fire for a name tag. I won't pretend to be less so others feel more comfortable. I won't sell myself for likes, applause, or a paycheck that cost me my spirit. The systems are loud, but the truth is louder when you finally listen. And that truth says, you were never meant to be a servant to a machine. You were never designed to be drained. You were made of stars, not spreadsheets. You were built for wonder, so pause, breathe. Not the shallow breath of survival, but the deep inhale of returning. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You're right on time to begin again, and this time, you write the contract with your own ink, with your own terms, and this time, it begins with a different promise. I will not trade my light for permission. I will not dim myself for comfort. I will not forget that I was never meant to be for sale. The great illusion doesn't wear horns or cast shadows. It wears a friendly smile. It holds a coffee cup in one hand and a planner in the other. It tells you kindly that you're doing great, that you're being productive, that everything is on track. And that lie is so seductive because it feels warm, it feels earned. You clock in, show up, meet the deadline, hit the goals. You follow the rituals so flawlessly that you barely notice what you're bleeding. It's not blood, it's not time, it's something deeper. It's the current that moves your soul, the raw creative pulse that once made you sing for no reason and build entire worlds out of nothing but air and imagination. That's what's leaking away, not in one big rush, but slowly, a drop here, a drop there. And what's left? A version of you that smiles automatically, performs on command, and asks for permission to feel anything real. The most brilliant trick of all wasn't oppression. It was making you participate in your own erosion, making you believe that sleepwalking through life was normal, that numbness was just adulthood, that the ache in your chest was ambition. But somewhere deep in your cells, there's a flicker that refuses to die, a small rebellious spark that knows this isn't all there is, that knows your spirit wasn't made to be tamed, that knows the quiet compliance you've mastered is actually a form of imprisonment. And if that spark is still alive, then you're not too far gone. It started earlier than you think, before school, before memory, when you were still wild and glowing, before anyone told you what was acceptable. That's when the programming began. Before you could write your name, you learned to suppress your truth, cry quietly, sit still, smile even when you don't want to, be agreeable, don't speak out of turn. They said it was for your own good. They said it was love. But love never asks you to abandon yourself. You started giving up your instincts to survive in systems that couldn't handle your wholeness. You traded freedom for predictability, wonder for safety, expression for acceptance. You didn't know the cost. You only knew that approval felt better than rejection. So you adapted. You became the version they applauded, even if it meant silencing the part of you that knew how to fly. And the systems that shaped you? They knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't want visionaries. They wanted reliable workers. They didn't need truth tellers. They needed order. So they trained you like a machine, bells, desks, lines, bells again. They didn't teach you how to think, they taught you how to obey, how to seek answers, not ask questions, how to memorize, not imagine. Every good job you received for staying quiet was a transaction, a small withdrawal from the account of your spirit. Until one day, there wasn't much left but routine and resentment dressed up as responsibility, and you convinced yourself this was maturity. But this kind of growing up isn't growth, it's domestication. It's turning the lion into a lapdog and praising it for how still it can sit. The contract was never written on paper. It was signed in your posture, in your willingness to swallow your instincts, in the quiet resignation that replaced your wild heart with a well-managed schedule. And what do you get in return? Security? Hardly. The promise of safety is always dangling just out of reach. There's always more to prove, more to earn, more to do before you're allowed to rest. You don't get peace, you get perpetual pursuit. You don't get love, you get performance-based approval. You don't get freedom, you get options that all lead to the same cage, just painted different colors. But the real tragedy, you forgot that you could walk away. You forgot that you could burn the script. You forgot that you didn't come here to be palatable or pleasing or productive. You came here to be alive, and aliveness isn't tidy. It isn't efficient. It's not convenient. It's messy and wild and beautiful. It's the truth that comes roaring out of your chest when you stop silencing yourself. It's the fire in your eyes when you remember you have nothing to prove. It's the scream you swallowed so many years ago, finally finding its voice again. Every day the system offers you the same contract. Trade your sovereignty for structure. Trade your dreams for deadlines. Trade your presence for performance. And every day you have the power to decline. That power doesn't look like protest signs or social media declarations. It looks like a quiet refusal, a soft no to what drains you, a sacred yes to what restores you, 1,000 small choices that say, I remember who I am. They taught you that creating without an audience was a waste, that resting without justification was laziness, that loving without a label was foolish. But those are the most radical acts: to create for the sake of joy, to rest because you are sacred, to love without needing a box to put it in. That's where the real rebellion begins, in reclaiming the parts of you that were labeled as inconvenient. And they'll resist. The machine doesn't like it when you stop feeding it. It will try to shame you back into place, call you selfish, unstable, irrational. But that's just noise. That's just the alarm sounding when the gears start to grind without your compliance. Let them call you what they will. You weren't born to be understood by a system built to forget your soul. They can't define you because they didn't create you. Your spirit doesn't answer to payroll. Your heart doesn't follow quarterly metrics. Your worth isn't measured in productivity. What you are, what you've always been, is uncontainable. And that's what scares them. They can handle rebellion as long as it's loud and predictable. But a person who simply stops playing along, that's dangerous, because it reminds others that freedom isn't granted, it's remembered. You don't need a permission slip to reclaim your life. You need remembrance of the part of you that still dreams, still sings, still burns, of the part that never fully surrendered, even if you pretended it did. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. Saying no when you've been trained to say yes. Resting when you've been rewarded for exhaustion. Creating when you've been told you're not talented enough. Loving yourself when you've been conditioned to seek approval elsewhere. It's awkward, it's raw, it's real, but it's yours. And once you get a taste of it, once you remember the feeling of being alive on your own terms, you won't want to go back. That's the beauty of awakening. It doesn't make your life easier. It makes your life yours. You stop being a reflection of expectations and start becoming a mirror of your own truth. You stop asking for validation and start embodying your value. You stop waiting for the right time and realize the time is always now. Because here's the secret. The system needs your participation to survive. It feeds on your fear, your guilt, your fatigue, your belief that you're not enough. Every time you step out of that belief, you starve the machine. And every time you choose differently, you create ripples. You may not see them, but they're real. The person who sees you say no to burnout might remember they're allowed to rest too. The child who watches you choose creativity over conformity might keep believing in their own magic. The soul who hears you speak your truth might finally stop apologizing for theirs. Your awakening is never just yours, and you don't have to abandon the world to reclaim yourself. This isn't about escape. It's about recalibration, rewiring, returning. Because the world doesn't need more performance. It needs presence. It doesn't need more productivity. It needs poetry. It doesn't need more compliance. It needs courage. And that courage doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to turn off your phone and turn on your soul. To choose slowness in a world that rewards speed. To choose meaning in a world obsessed with metrics. To choose depth in a culture that celebrates surfaces. You're not here to fit in. You're here to wake up, to look around and remember that the rules were written by people who forgot who they were, that the ladder you've been climbing leads to nowhere, that the race you've been running was never yours. And when you see that clearly, you stop trying to win. You start trying to live. Not the life they sold you, not the one with 5 steps to success or 10 tips to happiness, but the one that pulses inside your chest, the one that whispers in your dreams, the one that breaks all the rules and makes no sense except to your soul. That's the one worth fighting for. That's the one worth choosing again and again. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Because it's yours, because it's real. The most seductive trap ever built isn't a cage of steel, it's a ritual wrapped in routine, polished to feel normal, invisible to those inside it. They tell you that repeating the same motions day after day is called stability. They tell you that reliability is virtue, that predictability is safety, that your life is successful if it stays within the lines they've drawn. But what if the routine wasn't keeping you safe? What if it was draining the last remnants of your wildness? Look around. Most of what people call life isn't living. It's memorized behavior. Wake up, scroll, commute, work, numb out, sleep, repeat. No questions asked, no fire felt. The autopilot setting is on for years, and no one wonders why they feel hollow. That ache isn't random. It's the cost of being absent from your own existence. You weren't born for this. Your spirit wasn't shaped in some assembly line. You weren't designed to echo other people's thoughts, to wear someone else's goals like a uniform. There was a time, not so long ago, when you moved with instinct, with rhythm, with a pulse that had nothing to do with the clock. You followed joy, not schedules, wonder, not metrics. The day didn't own you. You belonged to the wind, the dirt, the sunlight, and then you were taught to swap that freedom for efficiency. It started small, one compromise here, another there. One voice saying, just be realistic. Another voice whispering, that dream's too big. And slowly the dream turned to dust. Not because you failed, but because you forgot it was yours. You thought you were being smart. You thought you were protecting yourself, but what you were really doing was building a padded room, comfortable, familiar, inescapable. And now, even when the door is open, you're not sure how to walk through it. Because they don't just take your freedom, they train you to fear it. Every scroll is a hypnotic trance. Every push, notification, a subtle reprogramming. Every ad that tells you you're not enough until you buy their cure is another psychic blade carving doubt into your self-worth. You aren't just being sold things, you're being harvested. Your attention is the fuel, your focus is the resource, your time, your emotion, your energy. They are the new oil, and you are the well. You think you're consuming, but you're being consumed. That's what no one tells you. that Netflix isn't offering you stories, it's harvesting your time, that Instagram isn't connecting you with people, it's farming your comparison, that the news isn't keeping you informed. It's programming your nervous system to stay in fight or flight, so you're too panicked to ask deeper questions. Because a fearful mind doesn't rebel, a distracted heart doesn't resist, and a drained soul doesn't remember how powerful it is. They taught you that you were powerless, not with force, but with fatigue. You're not too tired by accident. That exhaustion, it's engineered. Your spark was never the problem. Their machinery just couldn't run on fire. So they doused it with convenience, guilt, and obligation, and you called it growing up. The rituals are everywhere. Every holiday a performance, every meeting a script, every family dinner where no one says what they really feel. Just another ceremony of silence, and you participate, not because you agree, but because you've been trained to keep the peace at all costs, even when it means burying yourself alive under layers of polite conformity. And the price of that burial is your joy. Real joy is subversive. It doesn't follow the rules. It doesn't clock in or fit in. It dances when it wants. It sings when no one's listening. It disrupts everything that depends on your compliance, which is why the system wants it gone. And if they can't kill it, they'll sedate it with dopamine hits, with likes, with Netflix cues, with Amazon packages, tiny bursts of fake joy so you forget how real joy feels. And yet, beneath all that noise, something ancient is still whispering. It's not loud, it doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for your attention, but it waits, quietly, patiently, the part of you that remembers the taste of magic, the weightlessness of wonder, the thunder in your chest when you imagine the impossible. That part is still there. It's not gone, it's just buried, under deadlines, under debt, under all the roles you've been forced to play just to survive. But you can dig it out, not with effort but with honesty. Ask yourself, who would I be without the obligations I never chose? What would I create if I wasn't worried about being seen? What would I feel if I wasn't afraid to fall apart? The machine doesn't want you to ask these questions, because the answers dismantle everything it depends on. If you remember your worth outside of your output, you become ungovernable. If you find peace without their pills, you stop buying. If you discover that you're divine without credentials, their entire illusion crumbles. And that's why they sell you spiritual tools like fashion accessories. Meditate, but make it aesthetic. Journal, but buy the premium pen. Heal, but only through courses with payment plans. They've turned awakening into another product line. And most people don't even notice. They think they're ascending when they're just consuming in prettier packaging. The truth is raw, unbranded, free. You don't need a guru. You don't need a subscription. You don't need crystals arranged on a velvet cloth under a full moon. You need silence, stillness, space, not to escape, but to remember. Real healing doesn't look like bliss, it looks like breaking. It looks like sitting in the rubble of your own illusions, hands trembling, heart cracked wide open, saying, I don't know who I am anymore. And from that emptiness, the real you emerges. Not the version they applauded, not the mask you polished for years, but the wild, unfiltered, inconvenient truth of your being. And once you taste that truth, nothing else satisfies. The job feels hollow. The routine feels like a slow suffocation. The performances become unbearable because you've seen behind the curtain and you can't pretend it's real anymore. You begin to question everything. Why am I working this job? Why am I staying in this relationship? Why am I afraid of saying what I feel? Why am I chasing dreams that don't even belong to me? The answers won't come all at once, but the asking, That's the beginning of liberation. And every small act of rebellion becomes a declaration. I'm taking myself back. You reclaim your morning, not by changing your schedule, but by changing your presence. You stop rushing through the ritual. You wake up and listen, not to the news, but to your soul. You move slowly. You breathe deeply. You remember that this moment is sacred because you're in it. You reclaim your voice, not by shouting, but by refusing to be silent where it matters. You speak what's true even when it's messy. You stop apologizing for your intuition. You let yourself be wrong, be loud, be uncertain. You reclaim your body, not through punishment disguised as fitness, but through reverence. You stop exercising to shrink. You start moving to feel. You don't shape yourself to fit someone's ideal. You let your body be the temple it's always been. You reclaim your relationships, not by cutting everyone off, but by cutting off the performance. You stop pretending you're okay when you're not. You start asking for what you really need. You let the people who can't handle your truth fall away, and you grieve them without guilt. You reclaim your dreams, the real ones, not the ones that earn applause, the ones that terrify you because they matter so much, the ones you buried because someone told you they were childish, the ones you laughed off because you were afraid of failing. You dust them off. You whisper life back into them. You reclaim your time, not by managing it better, but by recognizing it's not theirs to manage. You stop living for the weekend. You stop watching the clock. You give your best hours to what actually nourishes you, not to systems that feed on your fatigue. This is how you burn the contract, not with fire, but with intention, with every choice that says, I will not offer my energy to what drains me. I will not decorate my cage. I will not be useful to machines that eat human souls for breakfast. You were never meant to be efficient. You were meant to be free. And freedom isn't found in rebellion against the outside world. It's in refusing to betray yourself on the inside. It's in remembering that no one, not your job, not your family, not your culture, gets to decide what your life is for. Only you. And when you start living from that place, when your decisions begin to honor your aliveness instead of your reputation, the world begins to shift, not all at once, but slowly, meaningfully, authentically. You stop drifting. You start choosing. You stop reacting. You start creating. You stop numbing. You start feeling. And that's how the revolution begins, not with a bang, but with a heartbeat. A single sacred yes to yourself. There comes a moment, whether quietly in the middle of a sleepless night or suddenly in the middle of a crowded room, when something inside you snaps, not in despair, but in clarity. A crack in the facade, a rupture in the spell, and through it, light begins to pour. You see the truth, not as a revelation, but as a remembering. Like dust shaken off old pages you once wrote in your own hand. It's not that you were lost. It's that you were buried, under years of obligations you never agreed to, under rules no one asked you if you believed in, under masks you wore so long, your skin grew around them. But now they itch, now they burn, and you can't pretend anymore that the life you've built isn't suffocating you. They told you to strive, to chase success, to climb, to earn your worth through endurance. But what they didn't say, what they never said, is that the summit they promised is hollow, that no amount of hustle will ever lead to freedom when the foundation was poured in someone else's blueprint. You've been living inside a bargain you never made, a soul for security exchange, cloaked in resumes and rituals. The suit and tie may look sharp, but it fits like a noose. And the salary that was supposed to liberate you only chains you tighter when it buys silence. This is what they never want you to realize. that the world doesn't run on oil or currency. It runs on human energy, on attention, on belief, on your willingness to trade aliveness for belonging. But what if you stopped trading? What if you said no, not in rebellion, but in remembrance? Because there is no revolution more terrifying to the system than a person who no longer needs it, a soul who chooses integrity over advancement, presence over applause, depth over performance. Not because they're angry, but because they remember they are enough without the costume. And when you remember the system can't touch you, you see through the rules, the games, the masks. You stop bowing to hollow rituals and start building your own. Not as protest, but as prayer, as reclamation. What would it look like to reclaim everything they told you was lost? Start here with your rituals, your small daily movements, not the ones designed by algorithms or marketing teams, the ones that belong to you. What if the first thing you did every morning wasn't checking messages, but checking in with your own breath? What if your morning ritual wasn't productivity but poetry? What if your meals became sacred again, eaten slowly with reverence? What if you stopped consuming in a trance and started tasting your life? What if you gave yourself permission to feel without fixing, to rest without guilt, to speak without filtering? Because these are not indulgences. These are revolutions. The world does not want you whole, but you do not exist to be pleasing. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be easy to understand. You are here to be true, even if it costs you everything built on a lie. Even if it means dismantling the version of yourself that was always about survival. That's where the liberation begins, not in fighting, but in unbecoming. Unbecoming the performer, the pleaser, the competitor, the obedient subject in a kingdom that never served your heart. And as you shed the skin of performance, you begin to remember your original language, the one before compliance, the one made of instinct and intuition. It speaks in sensations, it vibrates in presence, it doesn't negotiate. Your body remembers what your mind forgot. That joy isn't earned. That rest isn't a reward. That love doesn't come with conditions. These are your birthrights, not prizes for good behavior. They've convinced you that pleasure is dangerous, that freedom must be rationed, that truth is relative. But that's not wisdom. It's domestication. It's a cage wrapped in affirmations. And you don't have to destroy the world to be free. You just have to stop agreeing to the terms, quietly, consistently, without apology. Say no to meetings that drain you. Say no to relationships that shrink you. Say no to purchases that promise worth. Say no to rituals of extraction, masquerading as self-care. And say yes to what feels alive. Yes to time spent without clocks. Yes to tears that cleanse instead of shame. Yes to love that holds space for your wildest truth. That kind of yes is sacred. It's the yes that breaks the old contract. Not in fury, but in fire. That fire may not roar. It may flicker at first, gentle, vulnerable. But don't mistake its softness for weakness. This is the flame of memory, of returning, of reclaiming every piece of your essence that you pawned off in exchange for comfort. And when you start calling those pieces home, something miraculous happens. Your creativity begins to trickle back, not as performance, but as presence. You write not for likes, but for breath. You dance not for approval, but because your feet remember joy. You speak not to convince, but to liberate. You stop trying to be seen and you start seeing, and that sight changes everything. You begin to notice the invisible contracts others are still living under. You see their masks, their exhaustion, their quiet grief, and instead of judging, You hold space because you've been there. You know what it means to betray yourself and call it maturity. But now you are becoming something different. You are no longer a consumer of life. You are a creator of it. Not because you have all the answers, but because you finally stopped asking the wrong questions. Not what do they want from me, but what do I want to give the world that only I can give? Not how do I get ahead, but what do I want to leave behind? Not how do I become acceptable, but how do I become whole? This is what spiritual sovereignty looks like. Not transcendence, but total presence. Not perfection, but radical honesty. Not bliss, but truth. Even when the truth hurts. Even when the truth costs. Even when the truth means letting go of every illusion you once clung to like a lifeboat. Because illusions don't keep you afloat, they keep you numb. And it's time to feel again. Not just the highs, but the ache, the grief, the rage. Because real feeling is sacred, real emotion is information. And the more you feel, the more you awaken. They don't want you to feel deeply, because deep feeling leads to deep questioning, and deep questioning breaks systems. Systems built on sleep, on silence, on shame. But here's the secret. Your heart is more powerful than any of them, because your heart doesn't need approval to beat. It only needs truth. So let it beat, loudly, recklessly, unapologetically. Let it beat for something real, for a life you didn't settle for a dream you didn't abandon, for a world that remembers how to feel. Because when one person reclaims their soul, others start to remember. The rebellion is not a war, it's a ripple, and you are the stone dropped into still water. The choice to live fully, right now, as you are, is not small. It echoes, it spreads, it shifts the air. You're not just waking up for you, you're setting off a frequency that reminds the entire system. We are not resources, we are not assets, we are not brand extensions or marketable identities. We are alive, and aliveness has no metric. Aliveness doesn't fit into a productivity app or a 5-year plan. Aliveness is messy. It's inconvenient. It can't be monetized, but it can't be stolen either. Once you reclaim it, it's yours. So start small, breathe deeper, move slower, create more, scroll less. Listen for the voice underneath the noise. It's been whispering your name this whole time, and now you can finally hear it. Welcome home. Welcome back to the rhythm of your own being. No more contracts signed in silence. No more trades of soul for structure. No more rituals of slow spiritual death masked as duty. This is the moment you stop waiting. This is the moment you stop hiding. This is the moment you choose to be wildly, fiercely, defiantly alive. And when the old life knocks, offering the old deal, smile gently and say, "That version of me no longer lives here.